Okay, this is explosive. In our last Elite Politics episode, we discussed how there was a secret meeting that was held, and the discussion was to remove Xi Jinping from power, or what to do about Xi Jinping in the future. Well, we just got new information. In fact, 3 speeches from that meeting. We're going to talk about it today. These 3 speeches come from Jintao, the former General Secretary, top CCP leader before Xi Jinping. The second comes from the Vice Chair of the Central Military Commission, Zhang Youxia. And the third is a Xi Jinping speech that almost seems like a rebuttal to the previous 2. And are these speeches real? Are they fake? We will try to analyze it and give you some context. And also, what does this actually mean for the future of the party and in China? First, you have to understand the broader context. Any real progress being made at any of these meetings, they're usually a secretive meeting, not really in the form of a former work meeting. In that, for example, former General Secretary Hu Yaobang was removed by Deng Xiaoping in an informal recreation meeting that turned into a struggle session. And this secret meeting really does recall that element of the struggle session, which I'll go into more details. And so anytime these meetings happen, they're usually not officially recognized, or if they are, is brushed off as some informal stuff. This supposed all-hands-on-deck meeting took place on May 14th, and according to the timeline, first to come up to speak was former top leader Hu Jintao, followed by Zhang Youxia, and the third to speak was Xi Jinping himself. First is the Hu speech. Most of the speech actually focused on recognizing, or at least what he thinks is the party's future, needing to continue the path of reform and opening up from the Deng Xiaoping era, which obviously was part of what made the CCP gain all of its wealth and power in the first place. And while throughout the entire speech, he never mentioned Xi Jinping by name, the things that he says, for example, some people are doing call to personality, concentration of power onto themselves, one-man rule, etc. And he's saying that we need to return to the stage of collective leadership, which basically means nobody is above anybody else in the top circle of maybe, say, 7 to 9 people. Because the current situation is that there's 7 Politburo Standing Committee members, Xi Jinping being one of them, but the other 6 are more like his followers or his servants, rather than equally distributing their powers among the 7, which every person has a say, or a sort of a vote, so to speak. Now, he also listed all of the PR crises generated by the Xi Jinping terms and how they're actually threatening the future of the party. And he goes on to make a very dire warning, which is that if this reform and opening up doesn't continue, it could threaten the future of the party. In fact, he is saying that the determination from his speech is they're willing to go through a civil war. I don't know if that means in China or in the party, probably in the party, to ensure that reform and opening up continue. So that is a pretty serious threat that he offered. Then came the second speech by Vice Chair Zhang Youxia, who we think right now holds the real military power inside the party and not Xi Jinping. And this obviously is a transitional period, so it's unlikely that he will forever to hold this position or the power, but his speech was more direct and very much offensive in terms of targeting Xi Jinping. So he opens the speech by recalling what eventually would lead to third term for Xi Jinping was actually Zhang Youxia dispatching military troops into Beijing to ensure that the 20th Party Congress would go smoothly for Xi Jinping. And remember, that's when we saw the removal of Hu Jintao, the guy who just spoke before him. And so you clearly see at the height of Xi's power in 2022, he was really the only person who had all the say. And then fast forward to the next year, into late 2023, Zhang Youxia began to realize, this is again in the second part of his speech, that what he had done for Xi was a wrong decision for the party, and he realized his mistakes. It was also around the same time he recalled that he started to hear information about potentially Xi Jinping turning on him, because one of the key contexts of Zhang Youxia is even though he is the first deputy chair of the Central Military Commission, he's actually against the Taiwan invasion, or he doesn't believe the Taiwan invasion will go the way that the CCP will see it through. There's actually a really interesting thing, which I'll talk about in a second. But whereas the second vice chair, He Weidong, is Xi Jinping's personal confidant, put in place specifically to ensure that his Taiwan invasion goes into motion. So you can clearly see that eventually these purges were going to catch up to Zhang Youxia. So here's the little detail, right? Remember the former defense ministers that were purged, Li Shangfu and Wei Fenghe? Well, they were actually, in fact, sort of this line of promotion, they were actually Zhang Youxia's people. So when these people were purged from the party due to corruption issues, which obviously isn't corruption, they eventually will find their way up to the top, and the very top of that chain of command is Zhang Youxia. So Zhang realized that he was eventually going to get ousted or to get removed, probably even worse. What happens? Well, in the beginning of 2024, remember last episode we talked about this, this came from a friend of their family in Beijing. So this message is, I believe, very authentic, that Zhang was ready to, prepare their family home for, the end of it, right? But then by the turn of that year, so about half years or so, he started receiving people having like banquets at their home every single night. So something did happen during that time, right? So he obviously was not removed. He's not been purged. In fact, who did get purged? Well, He Weidong did. So that's very interesting. Now, Zhang continues to talk about how now he wants to ensure that something like what Xi Jinping had done never happens again, and that he's going to ensure that the party smoothly transitions. Okay, so somebody noticed that in the speech, Zhang Youxia refers to his former two friends, the two defense ministers, as comrades, but he did not refer to He Weidong, his colleague in the Central Military Commission, as a comrade. Now, in the party speaking, that's a very good way to differentiate your friends and enemies. You call somebody a comrade, that's your CCP member. If they're addressed by name, no comrade involved, that means they're an enemy. So this also indirectly fits the writing styles or the speech behaviors of a CCP official. Now, before we talk about that speech, I just want to take a moment to quickly thank you guys for donating and supporting our campaigns to Singapore and now to Taiwan as well. And those of you that have contributed have already helped us get accommodation, gear, equipment, and everything else. So thank you so much again for your support. And if you do want to support our channel, especially if you want to support our Singapore campaign, check out the link in the description. It's the zeffy.com link. Or if you want to donate to us for a trip in Taiwan, which we're going to be filming a lot of daily vlogs, exploring the history and culture there, also obviously look into the political situation and the China CCP infiltration as well. So if you want to support that effort, consider donating to us. The link is the donor box link. And we appreciate all of you, especially because your view of the videos that we put out is the best and the most generous support that we can get. So thank you so much for being a viewer of China Insider. And thank you again for those of you who spend your hard-earned money to help support the channel. So I won't let this go to waste, and I hope to bring you lots of great content in the upcoming days. Thank you so much, and let's continue. And then it came to the Xi Jinping rebuttal speech, which, by the way, is actually the third speech in this meeting. So this is very important because you have to understand this felt more like, with this sequence of speech, more of a struggle session of somebody who is being removed rather than a speech about work. Because normally, when you have these meetings, if they're really about work, they would be, the person in power would speak first. So normally that would be Xi Jinping, followed by other people. But this time he spoke third, which is very interesting. So in his speech, he obviously defended against his policy, saying that, we face unprecedented crises, the Taiwan situation, et cetera, I needed to do what I needed to do. But then he went on to apologize for his misuse of his power, in the sense that he didn't consult the party elders or those people who he was supposed to seek advice from. So he says in the future he will do so, which in essence is him sort of going lower a level to kneel down to those who are now taking over, to say that, hey, I will behave and I will be better, so don't do anything dramatic to me. Essentially, he's saying that just let me step down peacefully. Don't do anything and like what happens to all the other dictators. So he's saying that. And he's also saying that right now there's a vacuum if I step out immediately of the party, which is actually true, because Xi Jinping had concentrated all of the powers within himself over the last decade or so. If he was immediately removed, there would be a power vacuum or a lot of issues that nobody really wants to take responsibility of. So that's why it's so hard. And that's why this meeting was really in nature about decisions have been made. What are we going to do to ensure a smooth transition of power within the party, of course? So none of this is actually good, right? Because the party is still in the party. Everything's still happening. This is all just dirty, exchanges of power. It's not like China's getting better at the current stage. But they also face, in essence, a dire question. And that question is, can you still maintain the system after Xi Jinping? Here's why. Let's say they put somebody in power who ends up is worse than Xi Jinping. Well, then they just wasted all their effort doing this for nothing, right? So that's not going to happen. They try to put somebody that's better. Let's say, a real reformer, so to speak. Well, that guy has no way out, because the party itself, that system, is just indirectly contradictory to that of reform and opening up. Because without reforming the political system, you can't have true market reforms, right? Because we've seen this, like, Xi Jinping was trying to reform in his own ways, but his reform was like more control. And the other guys were like, yeah, okay, let's loosen up the policies. And then what happened? June 4th, 1989 happened. So there's no way that they can truly embrace reform and opening up unless they truly have a complete revamp of the system. So they're not going to do that, or it's very difficult to do that because they risk losing power. Anyway, so Xi Jinping then goes on to say that, okay, well, basically I'm ready to listen to what you guys will say, and I won't be this one-man rule anymore. Now, having heard all three speeches or the details of them, how much or how can this be leaked out? It's such an important meeting, right? So I say this, the details, it's 50-50, okay? You can't fully trust it, but you also can't fully deny it. The reason is the ways in which things are described, some of the details that confirm other information, a lot of this it's a mixed bag of situation, right? It's like an inherent contradiction in itself, which is actually a good thing because you can't have a 100% sure thing about something because that's not how intelligence works. So given the fact that we know nothing about the CCP's opaque way of work inside the party, we just have to say that these rumors are half true and half false. And time will tell. Because this is very easy to confirm. Within a few months, they're going to have the fourth plenum, because that stuff, you can't drag it out for 2-3 years. They're going to have it, and we're going to see if Xi Jinping still controls the military, or he fully retires, or if he doesn't, which I think the chances is highly unlikely that he remains fully in those positions. But still, we have to understand this. This is not about the end of the CCP yet. This is about the end of Xi Jinping, and that doesn't mean it's always a good thing. Right? We could have somebody that's even worse come up. We could have somebody that's better. Who knows? So what exactly was the purpose of this meeting then? Well, it's very simple. They've already decided what to do, and they just want to say, well, this is how we're going to implement it. Okay, so one thing I do want to address is that if you actually go look at what some of the CCP officials, it's supposed to be an all-hands-on-deck meeting, right? What they were doing on the 14th of May, which is when this meeting happened, some of them were out touring other provinces or giving speeches elsewhere. So what gives, right? That's clearly a contradiction or a lie. Well, actually, it's very easy to explain because if this meeting was more like a struggle session than an actual work meeting, it means that these irrelevant officials didn't have to attend. The only real person that needed to attend is Xi Jinping because he's the person who's getting, blamed for it, and everybody else that's on the other side. So it does make sense in that way. And because the sequence of the speech, right? In these struggle sessions, the typical way is you have the main boss guy, like the guy who's in control. He's going to give a very vague, very generalized overview speech, which Hu Jintao did. Then the second guy is the attack doc, the one who actually is like a deputy. He goes on to name all of those crimes, or he actually names the person in fact being blamed here. This time it was Zhang Youxia who did that, and then you have they give the speech to the individual, right? Here, you have the floor time, explain yourself. Obviously, their whole rebuttal or explanation doesn't matter because the crimes have been decided already, but it's just the process of how it goes. And yeah, even though the Cultural Revolution had ended 60 years ago, we're still getting that same format even today. But so far what we've seen is a consistent confirmation of rumors since end of 2022. So after Xi Jinping became the continuous of his third terms, all the rumors so far we've seen, most of it has been true, right? The purges of the defense ministers, the removal of foreign minister Qin Gang, the current purges with He Weidong and Mao Hua, these top generals, right? These didn't come from Xi anymore, so these have been confirmed as well. So everything so far seems to line up, and the story just continues. And we'll probably have another or multiple Elite Politics episode about this current timeline. And so thank you so much for watching this episode. If you enjoy the content, make sure to leave a like, comment below your thoughts on the topic, and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Again, if you want to support our channel, consider those donation links in the description. Thanks again, and see you next time.